The 2019 Game Developers Conference will feature an exhibition called Alt.Ctrl.GDC that uses alternative control schemes and interactions. Gamasutra will be talking to the developers of each of the games that have been selected for the showcase. A mask allows players to change visual frequencies, seeking hidden viruses they can shoot down with their wristwatch-controlled turret in Continuum Bacterium. Gamasutra had a chat with Lam Creative Lead on Continuum Bacterium to talk about the immersive effects of wearable controllers, the job of giving the players limited information, and the thoughts behind creating games where players must work together to overcome. My name is Henry Lam and my role in this project is creative lead. I have been designing and documenting games for over 15 years, but only have been actually making them in the last 5 years. Our controllers consist of a wristwatch apparatus and a face mask. The wristwatch has a dial and a button that serve as the main controls. The face mask filters visual information from the screen. Both devices also help convey additional information that is not on screen. The concept of using the mask to filter what players could see came from the use of electric privacy filters. Common uses for them are for conference rooms and bathroom windows, where you want to be able to turn a piece of glass from transparent to translucent and back with a flick of a switch. I had never used one before, and I wanted to see how I could play around with what players could and could not see. We used Unity and Arduino for the development of our game. We used an off-the-shelf face shield as the platform for the mask helmet. Acrylic, cast metal, and 3D printed parts were used for building and decoration of both the helmet and the watch. The appeal of obscuring what players can see or not see from each other stems from two things. First is the common circumstance where you have two players using split screen and cheating by watching the other player's movements. Second is that this is an extension of stereoscopic 3D shutter glasses, where they alternatively show information to each eye using a single display. I wanted to deconstruct and extend it in another direction. This treats each player as a separate eye, and the difference between what they see becomes a point for cooperative play. We wanted to have player communication and cooperation as an aspect of our gameplay, and using that difference between what they see as individuals as they toggle through visual frequencies allows them to see the same things or different things. Pardon the puns. But while both players can be on the same wavelength, we ultimately want them to cover different frequencies in order to more effectively deal with the entire spectrum. Some of the themes we have had in the past, as well as in Continuum Bacterium, are ones that focus on player dynamics. We try to make games where dialogue and expectations between players are key components to the gameplay, whether that communication is to draw out cooperation or competition. The wristwatch controller actually came after the mask and the time narrative of the game had been conceived. Once time became a central theme, it became natural to use a controller in the form of a wristwatch within the context of the game. I think costumes are an integral part of immersion. Having costumes, especially functional ones, extends the experience beyond what is merely on screen. The game controller is the physical touch interface that will have that corresponds with the visual and audio experience of the game. Having a unique controller is akin to designing your own visual assets or producing the soundtrack. It really allows you to express that craftsmanship of building a game experience to another degree. Writing for video games is perhaps the most romanticized discipline in the video game creation process. People who would not know any better imagine an author with a concrete vision, flanked by programmers, designers, and artists that shared vision. They work together like a well-oiled machinatos part, that narrative vision, and when the game is eventually released, the story is exactly how the writer imagined. Of course, it does not work like that. And last week a group of accomplished game writers got together to tell their honest stories from the game writing trenches. Game writers Fixman Marianne Krawczyk and Bissell gathered at the West by invitation of the writer Pascal Foundation in Los Angeles on a panel moderated by Naughty Dog creative director and writer Neil Druckmann, to top the craft of game writing, sharing stories about difficulties, working on their most famous games, theories about the craft and what separates it from so many other forms of narrative, speaking for a mixed audience of film writers and game industry professionals. Their stories ranged from basic advice on getting into games writing, to anecdotes from the making from their biggest games that show the frustrations, obstacles, and triumphs of telling good stories inside AAA and sometimes indie games. Fixman, Krawczyk, and Bissell all entered their respective careers from wildly different circumstances, which each informed their first surprises as to what would happen when trying to tell tall tales in digital worlds. Fixman, hired up from the QA trenches at Insomniac, remembered getting his first Ratchet and Clank game that brought him to a Shark Tank-style meeting with a panel of Insomniac animators and designers. I wrote this joke, where Ratchet and Clank are in a ship together and the designers wanted them to fall asleep so they could wake up in a new environment, he explained. So this task comes out, Ratchet goes, "Oh, cryosleep, guess I am not gonna fall asleep," and of course he falls asleep, and Clank says, "Knowing it's good that boss does not work on robots," and that boxing glove pops out and knocks him out. They just started peppering me with, "Why is this funny? What is the joke? Where does this fall in the hero's journey? Is this the save the cat moment?" I am wide-eyed and going, I thought it was fun. I am so sorry. That's what I realized. As a game writer, you think you have this freedom, but you do not. There are so many constraints and so many moving pieces, and from then on out, I was hyper-aware that any time you write anything in a script, that changes the game for 20 different departments. Krawczyk, most famous for her work on the God of War games, got her first job at Sony Santa Monica, and immersed herself in some quick design courses to help her understand the craft she had been doing. Then worked closely with game director David Jaffe to be a RAINSTORMHIS ideas for the first game and shape them into a cohesive narrative. David had a really clear framework for what he wanted. He just did not know what the story was or how necessarily in text it existed yet. Krawczyk said, "My job was to sit there and talk to him. When do you start coupling together the story?" As he was figuring out how to tell it and figuring out the designer and presentation and story, twist, and everything came very organically. Many of the series' most talked about story beats came out of those sessions, including the tragic reveal of Kratos, familicide, and his ghost white skin. Krawczyk observed that even casual references like that would reinvigorate Jaffe. You could always tell because his eyes would sort of light up, and then all of a sudden do you have that bullet point in place? She said. Bissell's background as a nonficiton writer, then game essayist, then game critic, was possibly the most unconventional of the three speakers. But he told a similar story to Fixman's about being assigned to write an explanation on Gears of War judgment as to why the university level would be filled with poison gas emitters. That's when I began to realize that this is a form of writing that throws some real curveballs at you that probably only a few hundred people on the planet have ever had to deal with, he said. When quizzed by Druckmann about their different game scripts, all three writers bemoaned and shared the realities of the lack of a universal tool or writing format that they had in other non-game work. Fixman explained that on the Ratchet and Clank games, dialogue existed in three places: in final draft files, further in game cinematics, in Excel files, where dialogue was organized by level, and in a third file just called emergent dialogue that was organized by character, with no script coordinator. Every change Fixman made to a Ratchet and Clank script had to be made in three different places, hundreds of times throughout production. On God of War,